Oregon, and we will be the co-hosts for today's webinar. At the end of this 30-minute webinar, we will facilitate a short live Q&A for about 15 minutes. I also want to point out that Leah Kenny is joining us. She works with us as well, and she will manage the Zoom technology. You'll see her in the chat panel. She's already chatted with you. Please write to her if you're having any technical issues that you need her to address. Brief reminder, brief preview, we're going to send you materials after this so you can relax a little if you don't get everything in notes. And I'm now going to turn this over to my colleague, Rachel, to walk us through some of the house cleaning items that help make webinars go smoothly.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Jacqueline. It's a pleasure to be with everybody today. I want to just walk through a few webinar etiquette tips. I realize we have all become Zoom experts at this point, so I'll be brief. First, we understand that in today's world, most of us are working from home and can only try our best to remove distractions. So we know that there may be pets and children running around your workspace, and that's fine. Please just make sure that you are on mute during the presentation to limit the background noise. And make sure to get yourself a beverage and something to take notes as we get started. So the audio for this webinar is being broadcast by phone and online. If you are not already connected to audio, click the Join Audio in the Zoom toolbar, and you should also have the option to dial in to the phone line so you can listen by phone or your computer audio. Click on the chat box if you have questions or comments for the presenters, or if you want to share more great ideas. While we won't be able to answer all of your questions right away, we'll be monitoring them and we'll queue them up to answer during our Q&A portion. For the chat, just a reminder that when you are sending resources or questions to everyone, to make sure that in the chat box you send to everyone. Okay, so we wanted to get to know you all a little bit. We have a couple of poll questions. We would love to hear from you. The first question is, what grade levels do you teach? Are you pre-K through 2nd grade, 3rd through 5th grade, 6th through 8th grade, high school teacher, or other counselors? We have counselors out there, or librarians. Let us know, and we'll post those responses when we get them in. I know a lot of you are probably teaching multiple grade levels as well.
If you aren't seeing the poll, you can go ahead and write your response in the chat box.
Thank you, Leah. I see some middle school teachers. Oh, we've got a really pretty good spread. It looks like a little bit of everybody. A lot of 3rd through 5th grade elementary school teachers. Awesome that you're here. My fellow middle school teachers, welcome everyone. Okay, our next question is about what subjects you teach. We realize that if you're elementary, you're probably teaching across subjects. We want to know if you are an ELA teacher, history, social studies, some science, technical teachers out there, arts, PE. Got some ELA. Thank you, Connie. Some ELA teachers. I was in middle school ELA and social studies. Hi, Roseanne from Kansas, 7th grade. Yes, I was a 7th grade teacher too. They're a fun group. Keep you on your toes. Special education. Thank you, Terry, for being here. Looks like we're getting also a lot of different topics, which is wonderful. As you know, teaching writing is important across subjects. Oh, gifted education, Misa, welcome. Lots of different, we have a good chunk, Jacqueline, of ELA teachers. Welcome, and elementary school. All right, I'm going to pass back to Jacqueline to get us started.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you all for participating in the poll. Rachel and I work at Education Northwest. We used to be called Northwest Regional Educational Laboratory. We're a nonprofit, fairly decent size, about 100 folks, many of them former teachers, principals, and researchers who focus on educational issues. We were in close collaboration with teachers. We worked to develop the 6+1 trait writing model in the 80s. We were the original developers of this model. And we've continued to provide a whole range of services, from training to coaching and consulting and scoring services as well, to support student writing. And in particular, giving clear, consistent feedback and data-informed instruction for teachers. It has been a pleasure to work with teachers on this model. We continue to stay close to the field and to talk to folks, and we'll bring that up a couple times. And we're really interested in sharing what we can with you today about text sets, and also potentially sharing more about 6+1. My background is working primarily with middle and high school students. I've also had a stint as a community college developmental writing teacher. I manage the 6+1 trait writing program at Education Northwest. I work with a team of facilitators, and we all represent a wide variety of grade levels and experiences. And personally, I'm especially interested in using school and district-wide writing improvement efforts as a way to drive school change. I see it as an area where everyone has some skin in the game. We all care about students becoming better writers. Rachel?
Yeah, I am a former middle school English and social studies teacher, originally taught for several years in the Bay Area, California. I've been working with Education Northwest for several years, providing training and curriculum development for 6+1. Teaching writing has always been one of my favorite topics, so I'm especially happy to be here with you today.
Okay, thank you. We have two objectives here. We could have a multitude of objectives. There are just so much out there about text sets, which I didn't really realize when we decided on this as a topic. This is a research-based strategy that is really well represented online. But we want to briefly review with you the key features of text sets, how to find them, or where to go for guidance on developing them, and why they're important. And then spend the bulk of our time talking about some ways that you can use text sets to support teaching writing. And I'm really excited to also share with you a little bit more about how we're going to continue to reach out to folks and support student writing through some upcoming presentations and series that we're planning. So we'll talk about that at the end. Rachel, I think you're up next.
All right. So we're going to begin our discussion today by defining text sets and why they're important for student learning. So text sets are collections of resources from different genre, media, and levels of reading difficulty. They're currently readily available on the web, such as the one that you see here from a site called Newsela. Many teachers already use text sets as alternatives to textbooks, and there are also some great online resources that provide guidance on how to create your own text set. We, again, are going to send you those resources at the end of the webinar, but please feel free to use the chat box to share any resources that you have come across when using text sets that we can share among each other. So characteristics of text sets: at the most basic level, a text set is a group of texts that put text into conversations with one another. They focus on one engaging topic, and they're part of an instructional unit, often with a big question or guiding question. Text sets can support really a range of learners in reading, and all learning the same topic, but at different levels. And when using text sets for reading specifically, they are often include multiple text types. So there might be informative, narrative, argument, and multiple text structures, compare and contrast or chronological. Text sets may include different genre. There may be a poem, or memoir, technical article, and of course, they may include different types of media, like a video or podcast. So there's many reasons to use text sets, and I'm just going to share a few of them. Text sets promote student voice and choice for independent reading. Students can select among texts what interests them most. They support building knowledge in multiple content areas. Text sets help us to differentiate instruction. So instead of textbooks at one level, we can help all readers access information on a certain topic by filling our classrooms with multiple texts that vary in readability. And of course, why we're here today, text sets support authentic writing and research. Students can keep track of new knowledge and new vocabulary, and they get to show their learning through their writing assignments. I'm going to pass it on back to you, Jacqueline.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what educators might be thinking about as they develop or adapt existing text sets for writing instruction. Like text sets for reading, a writing text set would most likely focus on a high interest topic, be intentionally grouped and part of a unit of instruction with a guiding question, and be designed to support all learners in reading and writing. But there are some variations that educators may want to consider. For one, instead of being large and sprawling, a writing text set may focus on a particular single text type or structure, a particular genre as part of a genre study, and most likely one type of media. Now that's not necessary, but we're going to start by thinking about these in a smaller way, more focused. So what you might do is take an existing text set and carefully select what you'll use when you're talking about writing with your students. We also recommend that you start off small. We'll talk shortly about the power of two. You can always add more text later, but this is a scaffolded model for helping students understand text features and other things. Finally, for writing, you may want to consider using excerpts of texts, particularly as you develop a focus for what you'll be working on with the students. You're also going to be wanting to think about using previously read and discussed texts that you've gone over with students already, and adding another text to your set to be able to enlarge and expand the conversation to more broadly another work or another genre or another text type. Student writing is another possibility. There is no reason why student writing can't be part of your text set. And some of the text sets that we've seen, and we're going to send all of this to you, we've looked at quite a few examples, and I see some of you mentioning them. Some of them also are used by students, are used by teachers to help students write, and students respond to the texts, and those collections of student writing samples are available for you. And that's a really wonderful way to sort of combine your reading and writing, which is so helpful for students. So now I'm going to get to the heart of our presentation, or at least begin that. How do text sets support student writing? And there really are two ways that we're going to focus on here today. One is to help students examine authors' choices regarding key features of writing. That we're getting a little feedback. Somebody may need to mute themselves. And the other is specifically to support teaching opinion and argument writing. There are probably many other ways that you can use text sets, but these are the two ways that we're going to be focusing on first of all. And one of the things, first we'll start with teaching key features of writing. One of the things that we use when we talk about writing, and we're 6+1 trait writing, so this won't surprise you, the rubrics are foundational to our work. And each rubric for each of the traits consists of rows, which we call indicators. Each one of these indicators is a potential focus for your text set for writing. They represent particular features, specific features of effective writing within each trait. And we would use a text set to support students in examining and better understanding authors' choices related to these indicators, or features of high quality writing. Because if you look over at the 6th side of exceptional, these are the features of high quality writing. And as you know, these features or indicators will look different depending on the purpose and audience of your writing, the text type or genre. So using multiple texts and looking closely at these features or indicators, both within and across text types and genres, is a really powerful way to help students understand the traits and understand the features of high quality writing, which are one and the same. So that's really helpful. We have some tips for you. There's probably a number of ways to use text sets. In some ways, we're talking about sets of mentor texts and how to build and help students understand high quality writing by reading like a writer. So one of the tips is for you is to start small, pair a new text with a previously read one, which is really going to help students begin to expand learning they've already started with you. The first thing we recommend is posing questions related to the indicators that we've already mentioned, the particular trait. So you're going to pick a trait and you're going to pick a row in the rubric and say, this is the focus for my use of the text set. And then we recommend starting by having conversations about individual texts in that text set. And starting verbally with the teacher prompting and helping students to answer questions, and we'll model this in a moment, answer questions using evidence from the text and from the rubric. One of the most important things, and one of the hardest things I think, especially when you're trying to get students to analyze text, is to recognize that the answers are less important than the discussions that students have. This is true for teachers and for students. So don't get too hung up on exactly which question or what your students answer. It's getting them to look closely at texts with a particular writing feature in mind. Ideally, you would move to having students write responses to some of the questions that we're going to recommend and talk about, maybe using frames so that they have a beginning and a clear direction for what you want them to respond to and think about. You might want to consider having students work together collaboratively when they're looking at text. That's a really helpful thing, text sets, to have them talk to each other, especially English language learners, is extremely important, to make sure that they're discussing the question in the text really carefully, especially when you start moving on to more than one text. And finally, culminating a text set, use of a text set culminating in a writing activity that's based on one or more of the texts is a really important piece of this process, so to speak. Okay, I'm going to introduce a couple of biographical narratives to you. And we'll give you all of these, the texts that we mentioned, we'll send these to you as well. These are a pair of biographical narratives on the same topic. They're both on the relationship between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, two former presidents. So generally the same topic with different choices, however, about their focus and of course different styles, but they're both biographical narratives, so same text type and genre. Those Rebels, John and Tom, focuses a little bit more on the collaboration between these two men leading up to the signing of the Declaration of Independence. They're both really wonderful books, by the way, and it's great to find a pair of books that are about the same thing. And both books actually start by describing how different these two men were. But the first, those Rebels focuses a little bit more on how they collaborated. It's a beautiful blending of biography and history. There's a lot of humor in the book. You see King George looking at America as a piggy bank and kind of shaking a piggy bank and talking about taxes. It's really lovely and very relatable to students. Especially when they talk about their friendship. But Worst of Friends really does focus more on the arc of the friendship between these two, which interestingly concluded with them dying on the same day, which I cannot believe this was July 4th, 1826, the 50th anniversary of American independence. This really floored me. And this book really looks at, in some ways, their friendship and how they were so different in every way. I mean, how they were friends, even though they were different in many ways. And they had a lot of differences, the way they talked, the way they acted, what they were interested in. One was studious, one was more athletic. But their differences also complement each other. And I think that's a part of the focus in this book, is how they work together to help make America a brand new nation. They disagreed vehemently about how to run the newly created country. And this disagreement became acrimonious, and they became the worst of friends for a long period, eventually connected again, and were able to end up dying on the same day as friends. So these two texts are really rich for looking at multiple perspectives on the same idea. The idea of collaboration and the idea of making a new nation, and their friendship. So the ideas trait is a really rich one to look at for these two books. Are the main ideas the same for both of these books? Main idea meaning what some people would call the theme or the topic, or the what we call in the rubric the main idea. What is it that the writer most wants students to understand or readers to understand? You can also look at choices that each of these authors made about the way they crafted their narratives, related to the details that they use and the plot, and whether one is more appealing to students than the other. I think there's a lot of opportunities to compare and contrast here. So these are just some questions we're posing that may organize some of your discussion and eventual writing for students. What is each author's main idea? What is their purpose for writing, which is linked to main idea? How can you compare and contrast the main ideas? Now, for younger students, all of these questions, you're going to want to focus on, you're going to want to adapt the language. So for younger students, you might say, why did each author write this book? What do you think the author wanted us to understand about these two men? Or how are Adams and Jefferson the same? How are they different? Which lead or which beginning made you want to keep reading? And we'll send you these questions as well. But one of the things is you're going to always have to adapt questions like these for your students' grade level, experience, understanding of the traits, that sort of thing as well. But this is a really rich pair of texts to use to think about main idea and to look within a particular genre and talk about what does it mean to tell a story that's true. And why might authors make different choices about what parts of that story to focus on, which I think is a really rich question in itself. And then we have two other texts. These are a little bit different. One of them is called Ada's Violin, and the other one is an article about the same orchestra. It's called the Recycled Orchestra of Paraguay. And this is a fascinating story. An orchestra made up of children who play, they're from Paraguay, a very, very poor community. The community is literally on a landfill of garbage. And the families, many of the families make money by picking through the garbage and finding recyclable material that they can sell for a very, very small amount of money. But the story in both of these texts, treated very differently, is about one teacher's desire to help the students play music, and then realizing that he doesn't have any instruments. And because he's an engineer, he works with some other folks in the community, and they end up going into the landfill and finding the materials they need to make instruments for the students. It is a very beautiful story and a very, very emotional. So in Ada's Violin, we follow the story of one little girl who really wanted to play the violin and ends up getting a violin, and they look really bizarre. I mean, they're made of garbage. They're made of materials that are from the landfill. And she ends up playing in the orchestra. The conductor, the teacher, trains them very well. They learn discipline. They learn how to work hard for something. They also gain respect. The orchestra becomes really accomplished. And this is a true story, I should have said, in case it wasn't clear. They end up becoming, going on world tours and just becoming incredibly well-known. If you look online, the town is Cataora. The Recycled Orchestra of Paraguay is the name. You will find a lot of information. You can hear their music, you can see their instruments, but there's so many symbols in this story. Making beauty out of garbage, it just goes on and on and on. There's so many things to look at. But one of the things that you can do when you're looking at these two texts in combination is to think about how the forms are different, or the genres. Both are telling the story of the orchestra, but one is really focusing on a character and telling a traditional narrative. The other one is an informational text that's summarizing the orchestra's impact on the community. And they're both very rich, but of course one of them is definitely a story and will probably appeal to your students more, but the other one is an article that's very helpful for kind of understanding the bigger picture about this orchestra. So for this, again, we often focus on the ideas trait. What is the author's main idea? What are their purposes? Because they're a little different here. And the little letters after each of these questions are reminding me to say that it's ideas, and the A trait, the first trait, A, is the main idea. The second one is details, evidence, and support. And it might be useful to look at the differences in the kinds of details used in the narrative versus the informational article. And then another one to look at is which one is more engaging, and which one, how are the audiences different for these two pieces? And that's encapsulated in our indicator D, which is awareness and engagement with the audience. So maybe a different kind of reader is interested in reading about Ada, the little girl, than the reader who's interested in getting a picture of what this orchestra did and where it's going and how it's impacted the community. There are quotes from the teacher who started the orchestra, so all kinds of differences here. So next, I want to talk a little bit about text sets and supporting the teaching of opinion and argument writing. Rachel and I, some time ago, worked with a group of high school and post-secondary educators around writing. They had conversations together. And one of the things that the college faculty complained about was the students that were coming into the colleges weren't able to analyze even one source and respond to it effectively. And then they said to the high school teachers, why do you assign to students these arguments where they have to look at textual evidence and use textual evidence from multiple sources, maybe 10 sources, and it's more like a traditional research paper? Can you focus on helping them understand how to dissect and integrate evidence from just one or two sources, which I thought was a really great advice and really interesting information. So again, we would go to the rubric, and here the ideas trait is also extremely relevant because ideas encapsulate what is the main claim that you want to make when you write an argument or an opinion piece, and then how are you going to support it? And when you look at a text set for this purpose, there's just a plethora of evidence in a number of texts that you look at, and students need to make sense of this to be able to come up with their own perspective and to describe and to put it in writing and support it with some of the evidence drawn from these sources. This is the kind of task, performance task, that the Smarter Balance test definitely engages students in. So it's a really important one for students who have to take that test to get better at. Some of the tools that we use when we help students to look at texts when they're thinking about creating an argument, writing an argument, graphic organizers to help them look at different sides of an issue and organize their evidence, color coding, computer annotation. These are all useful skills, useful pieces. You can use one text set for an extended study of all of the different moves in argumentation, everything from just framing the issue to looking at evidence to beginning to thinking about how you can rank that evidence and which side of the issue you want to argue. And counter arguments, how you can use texts, including informational texts, to help inform your claim and your counterclaims. So I think those are obvious things probably many of you have done. We're going to send you an amazing Google site that comes out of one of our text set collections that we use often, and it has just a bunch of these text sets around issues. In this case, it's a text set focused on homework. And it includes, to begin with, a couple pieces for teachers to look at, for students to look at, just to get background on what is the issue in homework. What is it that we're talking about? who's concerned about the amount of homework, who isn't, what are the issues that students may want to think about if they're going to write about this topic. Then there are multiple perspectives represented by different informational and argument pieces. And these are just 3, but the particular text set that I was looking at had 5. They look at research, they look at different kinds of evidence, and they treat them differently. So some are pure opinion pieces, some are informational, and you can really help students by taking just a small number of these and discussing them and helping guide them to break them down and use them or begin to think about how they would respond to them. So these are some of the kinds of questions that you might ask, and this goes down a good portion of our ideas rubric. So what is the issue? How does the author frame this topic? What supporting details or evidence are used here? Indicator C is a really important one, this 3rd bullet. Where does the author share his or her reasoning or connect ideas? We don't want students to be using textual evidence in their writing and not explaining how that evidence connects to their claim, or linking and connecting different arguments that they're making within an overall argument. So helping students to see this kind of reasoning and where it shows up in the text and underlying it, and helping them to take it and think about using it themselves, really, really important for students. These are just some of the places to find student writing that in most of these cases, yep, the bottom 3 for sure, are related to text sets that already exist, that have the sort of collection of resources that students could have used to develop their writing. So you have a set of texts, and then you have student writing that accompanies it. This 3rd one, the National Writing Project's College Ready Writers Program, that's the website we're going to send you, and there's a particular Google Doc that is full of text sets for almost each step of argumentation. So really, really helpful information. I think I'm pretty much on time here. We're not ready to start registering folks yet, but if you're intrigued by the use of the 6+1 rubrics, we're trying to come up with a way to help staff to get better trained in how to use those. We've refined the rubrics over time, and one of the things we heard in the field is there's a great need for more support and more scaffolding for teachers on how to design and develop and deliver a unit to students around the traits. How do we actually teach using this rubric? So what we're developing are a set of tools, including some text sets and slides and other information that will be ready for you to use with your students. We're hoping that some of you are even able to use it online immediately. This workshop will be a 3-part series. There'll be a small fee for it. Hopefully it'll be manageable for you, and we'll let you know about it in time, and hopefully some of you will be interested. I think that, yep.
Yeah. I think that concludes the presentation part of the webinar. I know that was a lot of information in a short time, but we've got some really good questions as folks are processing and sharing ideas. So we're gonna begin our Q&A session now. You can type your questions directly into the chat. Leah will pass many of them over to us or share them aloud. And we're gonna try to get to as many of them as possible. I see some coming in right now.
We had a question already from Victoria. She said, how do you respond to students who don't enjoy revisiting the same text over and over? And how many weeks would you use these texts over?
Wow, that's a really good question. And I'm going to give that kind of frustrating answer that's never helpful, which is it depends. But the first part I think is interesting. One of the benefits of a text set, and especially in the literature, and let me tell you, there's a plethora of it out there. One of the benefits of having a larger text set is students can pick and choose, and you can have them almost like a jigsaw. Some will read one piece, some will read another piece, and have them come together for a conversation. For students who have difficulty reading one text over and over, I think that I might try to find additional texts to expose the student to, or organize as much as possible my text sets with some choice for the students. Another thing I try to do is really remind them that we're using a different lens when we're reading and try to make it feel really different to them. So now when we look at the book, we're thinking about what the author was thinking. Why did the author write it this way? As opposed to when you first read it and you're working on comprehension and understanding the story. But that's a very good question. It's challenging. I think you can use text sets for weeks and weeks, or you can use them for a short period. If you're just using 2 texts, it could be in the course of a week to be able to share with students. And it also depends on the age group and a number of other things, but it's a very good question.
Someone is asking if you could put the slide of the rubric back up so they can take a look at it, and also if there's access to the 6+1 rubric online.
There is, but we're going to send it to you as part of our little package after the webinar. We did this for the last one as well. And they are available online as well on our website, but we'll send that to you. So.
All right, are there other questions that folks have? I see some chatting going on. We can give folks a couple minutes.
I have a question, but I'm not getting it entered for you to read it. I don't know why.
I couldn't quite hear the question.
Yeah, can you type your question in the chat? We couldn't really hear you.
I am not getting it sent. I typed it already, but I'm not getting it sent. I was asking, I would like to know when a teacher is teaching a whole class lesson and they are inserting a mini lesson into a whole class lesson, which should you conclude with? Do you conclude with the mini lesson or do you conclude with the whole class lesson? Which one should you bring your lesson in conclusion with? You're doing a whole class, but you're inserting a mini lesson to teach a specific concept. So which should you end with?
Well, I think if you're doing a mini lesson, which I understand is kind of a focused activity to give students practice around a particular skill, that the more that I can bring it back out at the end and talk to them about some writing that they're doing and get them to make connections between the mini lesson, which is very technical, and the writing they're doing regularly. Maybe they're working on an assignment and revising drafts if you're using a writing workshop. I would think you would want that whole class conversation or work together at the end. Mini lessons can tend to sort of atomize everything and make it feel harder to transfer. So bringing everybody together like that might be a useful approach. I do see a question here about adapting these ideas to the primary level. And we are going to talk more in some of our subsequent workshops about that adaptation. It needs to happen all the time. We have a separate rubric for K1-2, and I don't see any reason why we won't include that rubric as well. But these are teacher rubrics, and there is a need to adapt the language. And we talk about this all the time in our trainings. It's definitely doable. We'll send you some examples of ways to adapt some of the questions we have here for young writers.
Okay, Leah, are there some other questions?
Yeah, there's one from Chloe. It says, any thought given to best ways for effectively using 6+1 in an online / virtual instruction setting, since it looks like we'll be doing this for the foreseeable future? Any tips for educators who are trying to transform / adapt instruction for this new normal?
Yeah, first of all, this is a big deal. We talked about it a lot in our last webinar. Well, we didn't talk about it a lot, but we definitely acknowledged it more than we did here. You guys are really doing a fantastic job at a really, really hard job. And we are, this next workshop, we are moving toward providing as much online material that you can use as possible. And this is also dovetailing nicely with the request from the field to get even more direction for teachers on how to teach a particular trait. So I think that the next webinar series would be really helpful for you or for anyone who's looking at trying to transfer to a different environment. I mean, it's very doable, but it's very challenging. But we are going to create slides that you could just take right into your virtual classroom and use. So I think that's really helpful and give you directions on how to do that as well.
Another question is, are there plans to make a more condensed rubric available for tutors in remedial settings?
You know, sometimes we recommend, depending on the age of the students, the K-1-2 rubric has less to focus on. And there's nothing wrong with starting with that rubric if that's where a student's proficiency level is right now with writing, and that's more appropriate for that student. Another thing, and I see Rachel saying it right here in the chat, I should let her say it. Go right ahead, Rachel, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. So I think creating student-friendly rubrics, particularly at the primary level, is really essential. And doing so through remote instruction, I think will be very helpful. So walking small groups of students, whether it's in person or remotely, through a set of 3 to 4 descriptions of what an exceptional piece of writing is for a particular genre, and putting it in their words will be really important. And we're going to talk more about that in some upcoming webinars.
And this is a big theme in the traits in general, so it's an important topic, and we talk about it a lot. Any other questions? Well, there are a number of questions here. Where are we, Leah, in terms, are you kind of following the who's next?
I think that most of the questions that I've seen have been answered.
Here's one.
I see one just about sending slides, and I believe we're going to be able to send a copy of the presentation and all these resources and information for upcoming webinars via email within the week. Jacqueline, is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. I see a question here from Nancy. Some of our students have a hard time putting their thoughts in writing. Yeah. Any suggestions about how to encourage writing more? You know, most of the trainers here, we do a lot about mentor texts and text sets, more than one mentor set text. And if you can find an engaging text to share with students and to analyze with them and read closely, and then have them write about a similar topic, but write about themselves or write about a topic that's similar. Sometimes they're inspired to emulate some of the texts that they've read with you. So that's one way to help students. But when you're asking about having a hard time to put their thoughts into writing, that's the ideas trait. And there's a lot of planning activities that really help students. The research says that students who have trouble putting their thoughts in writing need pointers and help on how to plan. How do you brainstorm? How do I use a thought web to kind of help myself begin to have ideas and start to collect thoughts that I might want to write about? Another benefit that we didn't say about text sets is they give students a set of knowledge to write about. It sort of gives them, it levels the playing field, and they're all reading about the same topics. This is for informational texts for sure. And so they all share the same understanding of an issue. Let's say it's homework. And so then it's a little bit easier for them to write because you've broken that topic down and given them a lot of material, as opposed to asking them to come up with ideas themselves, which for many students is still a challenge. Modeling, yeah, modeling is huge. And that's what you'll see, that's what we do a lot of in our workshops, and I'm sure you all as teachers know the importance of showing students how challenging it is for all of us to write.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is for some of our students who are really struggling with writing, even the mechanics of writing, giving them activities where they're thinking out loud around their ideas, either in partner reading or partner discussions, can be really helpful.
And Jeff, I saw that you said this before. I couldn't agree with you more, and that's something we emphasize. The traits are there to break down the complex enterprise of writing and make it easier for the teacher and make it easier for the student. So yeah, one trait at a time, and sometimes, as we talked about today, one row in that trait rubric for one trait. Just start there and help students to see examples of that across texts. Really, really powerful, and that works for all students, and especially students who need to focus on one thing at a time to get started. Okay, I see a lot of thank yous, and I do see that we're at our 45-minute time period. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're all
Yes,
very
thank you
busy, and
all.
it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Please write to us if you have questions. You'll get an email from me that summarizes and gives you materials, but please write back. We want to keep this conversation with teachers going. And even though things are really hard right now, in some ways, this is a great time to connect because we're all on our computers so much. So I look forward to conversations with you. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.